Welcome, everybody. I think this is a topic that I did because of a question that I got or a comment that I got in one of my posts or one of my videos this weekend about what happens after a breakup, or what happens when I freed myself and I've done the right thing, but then I start to, hey, Crypto Joe, thank you. I start to I start to miss being touched, feelings of I want affection. I'm lonely. What happens when that's the issue afterwards? And I think that's a really important question to answer, but not specifically just that one, but look at the broader picture. So I listed things not in exact stages, but in ways that we can think about what happens after a breakup to ourselves. Hello, Sanders. Hello, must be a reason why I came across this. I'm 5 months out of an emotional and verbal abusive relationship. Absolutely. And you can share some of the experiences if you want. In some ways, I think that I do something called the recovery, like 6 roads to recovery is what I called it, from a narcissistic relationship. And I have that actually as a masterclass, but also as 6 videos just on my feed. And I'm struggling with the whole list. And yeah, and it takes you through each one. And I would definitely take some time to do that. But I think that, the one thing that I want to say, and you can tell me too what it is that specifically, like you said, you're 5 months out. And even though that's, whatever with time, that seems like a nice chunk of time, it's still kind of early. So I'm wondering, what level did you ever experience? So let's just kind of jump into it. Relief and freedom. And anyone can answer this, and you can start, because I'll talk about the relief and freedom first. When you've been in a verbally abusive or a narcissistic relationship or emotionally abusive relationship, we don't even have to call it a narcissistic relationship, because we don't really even need to qualify it as that. We just know that you're in a relationship that you are not happy, you're not being treated right, there is lack of respect, maybe there's something around trust going on. There are so many ways that especially people with codependency can get pulled into a relationship. Of course, like you're responsible as well, like a moth to a flame. And then once the flame goes out, once the chemical, dopamine wears off and you get to know somebody over time, but now you're locked in, you're merged, you're somehow in this dance with this person, and it's very difficult to get out. And absolutely, please do double tap the screen and like if you would like, or share this with somebody if you know that they're having a difficult time. Because to be honest, even last night I was eating dinner and somebody was like, oh my gosh, don't cry. You lean on your friends when you have a breakup, but really you need to be looking inside a lot more too, and getting help like this, because it's hard for friends to support. Thank you so much. I sometimes feel free, but struggling with trauma bonds, no contact, and it's been hard. So I am codependent. Yeah, but that's, I think, thank you for sending the positive vibes. That's awesome. I think one of the things is yes, you are, the point isn't that afterwards you're just, especially if you have issues with codependency, is that you're just, free. Oh, okay, now I'm out of that relationship, relief and freedom. Okay. And you feel that, and you're like, wow, this was really good for me. I did this for myself. I've got this down. Here we go. No contact. Boom. Screw that. There's a lot of really self-affirming ways that we can leave a relationship like that and actually feel pretty darn good for a little while. But then our work comes back up. The question of, why did we get in that relationship in the first place? What's going on in us? What are we looking for in a person? Now, it's us doing more self-inquiry, and I think this is where some of this other stuff starts to come up. Because when we start looking inward, we see a lot of feelings that we've never addressed. And this is kind of interesting. I like this. Like as far as a dialogue goes, if you're associating to what I'm saying and you come up with something to say, I'm going to look at that and kind of go back and forth. Even when he was abusive, I felt so guilty. I couldn't help him. He was abused terribly by his dad. This is the real, that's the codependency that we would say comes from this place that you have been, obviously, and I'm not sure where you're coming from as far as trying to save somebody, help them. Somebody has played on your sympathy to a point where, they've even neglected you and you still love them. Generally, these kinds of trauma bonds come from our parents. They say they love us. We say we love them. We depend on them for our safety and protection, but maybe they're very unsafe people. Maybe they're not well. Maybe they are 100 different things that are very dangerous to us, but we say we love them. And we stay real close to them. It's called, and I don't want to give you clinical terms, but we are adapted to stay close to, obviously for our survival, our parents, for better or worse. And when it's for worse, this is the kind of person that we're attracted to and have sympathy for, not empathy. And I want to make sure that you understand that, because the point of sympathy that we had to, and empathy is an evolved state, right? It's like it's a sympathy 2.0, when we can really put ourselves in somebody else's shoes and really not have a bias within our own head, really think about them without worrying about us. So it is really more about this sympathy you had for your parents. We can see our parents suffering. We can see our parents in fights. We can see our parents going through a hard time, and all we'll ever get, and they can put a lot of load on us. So that is one of the things, again, that relationship, no matter how weird it sounds, is the relationship you go and find in your life to fix. The first time, at least. Hopefully that doesn't happen again and again. Yes, my dad was abusive. My mom was codependent. My safety and emotional needs not always met. Absolutely. And right there, what happens is we have this need to repair that. Not only is it comfortable to find somebody that's abusive in certain ways and think my love is going to get me giving them my love and attention and rescuing them is going to get my emotional needs met. That's codependency. Me giving gets me. Now, you giving you attracts the right people that can do an exchange called a connection, right? They're actually connecting with you because you're different. You're not giving them something in order to get something back. This is also transactional. But again, where maybe the buck stopped with your parents, as far as, I love you, here's the ice cream. Now run along. There is a lot of transactional interactions when parents don't have the emotional bandwidth or the understanding of how to parent, by the way. That we then pick up on. We're like, okay, well, I guess that's the way that we're going to receive love. And we're taught this implicitly. We don't have like a choice. This is not something we're like, oh, maybe that's not the way love is really, felt. We're told something and we believe it. So that's really important for you to understand, that when you walked into that relationship. Now, I hope that we're exploring the whys of how you get into relationships like that. And then I'm doing a ton of internal work on my child and adult trauma. Excellent. And thank you for the follow. And all those likes, whoever did that was amazing. Wow. So, but to get back to what happens afterwards. So in codependency, when we're raised this way, we don't have, if our parents are abusive, traumatized, emotionally triggered easily, always working, absent, neglecting, Where are we having a positive emotional experience? At school? With friends that are our age? Maybe a teacher that's kind and caring, maybe once in a while with a parent, but really we're not learning how to modulate. And these are very serious adult level feelings: grief and anger, self-doubt and hopelessness, loneliness. I mean, I think a lot of teenagers start to figure out how to deal with boredom, but maybe not as much these days. And then desire for affection, fear of being hurt again, lack of trust. So those are feelings that we have as children that we're never really we're not getting any work on them. Our parents basically are doing all of this. I call it, they are the people that get to do all the feeling in the family. We have to suppress and internalize and model, or take care of mom or dad, and depending on the relationship, really. So I think that this is the thing, is that you really do need to consider that these are these feelings that start to flow in after a breakup are ones that shouldn't just be chemically, dealt with, made go away. This is an opportunity. This is the silver lining that we're able to look at, let's say, grief and anger. And if anybody that's on right now wants to say something about, and share this with anybody that has gone through a breakup too, called the dynamic duo, is that the grief that comes from after a lot of times has to do with, how could I have invested so much in a person and this is all I got back? How could I have done that? The grief and the anger, and then they kind of go side by side. It's not, I really miss that person. It's like, I really gave myself over to a person, and now I'm very angry because they didn't respect it, or I'm resentful in how much I gave. The grief and the anger. And this sometimes turns into a place where there is a lot of resentment that had built up over the relationship that you were not communicating to them effectively, or, in smaller portions, and now it's all there. And a lot of times it's projected and internalized. And I think this is a phase that I like to help people get through. I'm not really into, again, quickly, but I definitely think it's a phase that we need to work through, like knowing that it's okay for us to feel these things and to release them, but to stay there, to stay angry, to stay victimized, to stay self-victimizing about what just happened in that relationship, for how long it was, and all of those things. Those kinds of thoughts will wear you down, and they are not helpful over time. So grief and anger are two things that we need to acknowledge are going to happen, but they are not healthy places to stay for long. And if you can't get out of that state, you can say something now. I mean, if this state comes up, and I notice what I say is that it comes in waves. And so if you're still on and listening and you like it, double tap the screen, just because then it'll push it out more. But what are you guys thinking now? So about grief and anger, and then I'm gonna pause from talking to see where you are at with what I'm saying about that, because I think that's a stage that a lot of people get stuck. Thank you for the likes. Awesome, guys and gals. That's the stage I think people tend to get stuck at, and then it starts to, what I call, kind of infect, like bleed into all the rest. Because that last one here, that lack of trust in self and others, can't happen simultaneously with grief and anger. It's not that we're never going to understand that. And I really want to talk about that last one, and I will when we get there. There's something interesting. I'm sad and mad. I stayed 9 years and gave everything to him. That's right. Now, once you recognize this, I want you to consider, and maybe I'm saying something that you already know, that this statement here is self-validating because it is saying my time is valuable and my energy is valuable. And I have emotional value. I am somebody that will help others. I give a lot. I am valuable. 9 years, that indicates that I didn't see that value. Now I see my value. And anybody that I give my time to and my emotional energy to, or I show up for, is going to also be giving me the same back. I'm not looking for emotional resources. I know I'm valuable. I don't need you to tell me how I am. What I need is for you to see that in me and show me. And I'll see it in you and show you. So, really important. Do you see what I'm saying there? And did that resonate? 28 years thinking he would give back to me and he never did. Absolutely. 6 years. Time flies. I mean, because obviously we're doing our own lives at the same time. Breadcrumbed and love bombed the entire time. And I think you might have seen one of my Powerful Phoenix, how crushing that is, because the trauma bond is all about the reward. Because that was how we knew we were loved, is like we hung in there, we did everything we could, we didn't have, which as a child you had nothing else that you could do, and then there was the reward, there was the moment, but most of it was hanging in there. 6 years and 2 children. And where are you now? Now, is anybody experiencing, because the guy that asked this question got out of a relationship and and 2 wonderful kids. Now, there we go. I mean, that's right. Is like, skip to the last 2 points. Is exactly that. The men have asked me about fear of being hurt again. Lack of trust in self and others. Well, actually, his was, let me go here, is loneliness and desire for affection. Now, I think that these two are coupled. Why don't we look at loneliness and desire for affection and then lack of trust? How are we going to, because this, I don't know who out there, needs to hear this. We're all adults here. However, I think young adults that are raised in codependent families are very disconnected from their body, especially females, and they don't realize they can take care of themselves sexually. They can take care of their bodies physically, like exercise, eat well. They can, nourish themselves. They can be physical. They can be sexual. They can be self-sustaining without a person. However, that doesn't mean that that's going to compensate for, or that they don't want a relationship. And men, possibly too, right? That men might have more of this understanding of their control over their body. However, when it comes to wanting, a companion or a desire for affection, I still think it's like, okay, well, why? If it's because you want to connect with a person that you love, or you just want somebody next to you so you don't feel lonely. Because I got kind of 2 things for this, which is we have to work through fear of being hurt again and lack of trust if we want to date. Because the only way you're going to not, have affection and somebody there and have that, that companion and not be lonely is if you're with a person, you're with people, you're hanging out, you're dating, you're figuring that out, you're going through the ups and downs of what that is. But, I can't say like there's some sort of like resolution for that other than get ready to work on these 2 things, because until you do, you're not going to find a partner that is, or somebody that you can really connect with. If you just want somebody there, that you can go on dating apps and figure that out for yourself. But I don't think that that's what they were talking about, is my hope. I'm still living in the same house, but moving out very soon. Excellent. Good. Start, you know what, and start working on everything you possibly can, like personally. The more resolve about knowing who you are and what's happening within you, and why you're making this decision for you, and your growth, the more like traction you have in that pursuit afterwards. I think, meaning like you're going to have a head start instead of just leaving and then starting that process then. So hopefully that makes sense. How did you not see it? 20 years in a narcissistic abuse, a year of unresolved divorce. Yes, I want to say that because, and that's why I'm doing this work now, is because all of this absolutely is implicitly taught. We are sponges as children that learn to bond with our parents that aren't, they're neglectful, abusive, not there, emotionally inept, going on. But we figure out ways to connect to them so we survive. And that is programmed, that is conditioned. We go out into the world, and what do we see? Our sense of reality can't weigh the factors that we have never understood. We actually are more comfortable with somebody who needs us, who is broken, than we are with a healthy person. So that's how you don't see it, because of it's comfortable, it's unconscious, it's implicitly imprinted. It is right there, and you cannot blame yourself. That's why I say this grief and anger part, people get stuck on, but I'm saying this is where we don't sit there and go, it's how did, understand that there's a reality to why you didn't, that is very valid. And it's not because you want to hurt yourself or that you're dumb or that you should have done it another way. And what's wrong with me? That's self-victimizing, and that will really hurt you in the long run. That's why I say it's fine to go, I'm having that emotional moment of like, I'm frustrated with the fact that this is what I had to go through, but now I know. And I'm going to stop, again, and then go into other stages, right? Because really, it's doing that work and really trying to organize the experience of you. Not asking anymore why they did it. I find that to be the biggest hump for people, especially even when we're talking about parents. They left the guy, they figured it out, they understand his pathology and all his stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, you're not asking why, and you set a boundary there. But when it comes to trying to figure out the parental relationship and why that happened that way, like, no, we can really kind of understand why the parent wasn't capable. But other than that, there's no why did they do that to you, as if like that is what you deserved or that you should take their behavior personally. Your identifications with your parents have to be deconstructed, because a lot of times we internalize not being good enough, obviously low, unlovable, that all we are good for is fixing and taking care. And cleaning up. That's our identification, because that's what we were taught that was rewarded, and then what was rejected or punished. So we have to break those things down, and that will help release you from and start to bring more consciousness. The more you study yourself, the more you're going to know, and it's not going to happen again. That's for sure. I guilt myself all the time and wondered what was wrong with me the entire time. Yes. When I stopped researching his pathology and knew I couldn't fix him, I started healing. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why, yes, and that's a distraction. And maybe you can start talking a little, you could talk a little bit about, where you started, where's the first place that you started, or what were the little things that you did, because getting to the fear of being hurt again and lack of trust in self and others. I want to give an interpretation for that. A lot of times, people that have codependent tendencies that do a lot of fixing, that find people that are broken that they're attracted to, people that are broken and who need their help, and they can feel very strong with. They do this because they lack trust. Now, the healthy person is very threatening to a codependent mind because the healthy person might not need them. They would have to only want them. The healthy person would want to, might need to really be able to connect. And how does that codependent person validate themselves? How do they offer something of value? It's just like, oh my God, I might be rejected. And sometimes people with codependency issues have real issues with trust of themselves and of others because they have been so many times neglected or abandoned by their parents or rejected for having feelings. And so they are like, and so basically codependency that's like one of the cornerstones is I don't trust, so I have to be in charge. And if I'm in charge, right, then I can leave the relationship before you can leave me. If I'm in charge, I know, well, if you need me, I know I'm in charge. So the idea that this didn't work out, this arrangement of being with somebody broken, yeah, you're in charge, but they're in charge with their issues too, and they never got around to being somebody that you could actually trust, and you were always wanting to leave. I think that the issue of fear of being hurt again is that I know that I have to get into a relationship with somebody that I feel I can fix or help. Otherwise, how are they going to value me? How are they going to want me? So, I really find, again, if this is more about understanding these things at a deeper level than superficial. Because we can also say, oh, fear of being hurt again. Yeah, I don't want to be hurt. But it's about the complexity of codependency that's in that place. Being attracted to a healthy person takes more. It takes more effort and vulnerability. And somebody that is not yet understanding that they abhor vulnerability, that it's scary. Codependency is like, no, I could not be vulnerable because you couldn't be there, parent, or you couldn't be there. Now vulnerability on an adult level, it's tough. So I see that there's some stuff going on. I'll read it here. Hey, I have trust issues. Lady, what do I do? My lady broke up with me 8 years. And I've been talking about this, so hopefully I'm a big pushover and I try to fix people because I don't value myself. People have brainwashed me to have no value so they can use me. Yeah, okay, so I'm glad that you heard that. Excellent. Tell me what you understood about it, too. I think that's the kind of cool part is you letting me know what you heard or what associations you had, meaning your thoughts, while I was talking is really helpful. But I think, Carl, what I was talking about was your value is stuck in a place of what can I do for others, right? What can I do for others is where my value is, not who am I intrinsically valuable. People will brainwash you out of you. Yeah, thank you for answering my comment. Absolutely. Thank you for being open and asking that and giving me some information about your situation. And also I have a podcast, Emotional Warrior Radio, for everybody on. If you go to my website, you'll see an application. I am working with people specifically on certain issues. If you want to do a session one-on-one, but it's recorded. I don't use your name or any of that, but I ask you to fill out a little form. And if your issue is relevant for people with codependent issues, which all of you have them here, then I schedule a time to meet with you, and we do that. I see you, but then we only post the audio, and I help you as much as I can understand these things at deeper levels, so you have something of real insight when you leave. But it's a way for people to also, because as you can see, when I put out there about, the grief and anger of being in a relationship for a long time and not seeing it, there are so many people that identify with that really benefit from hearing your story, but also hearing, me address specific situations in a very specific way, kind of like I'm doing here, but it's a little bit more intense because you get to speak, and intense in a good way. So if you want to do that, you can go to my website and fill out an application. I'll look at it and I know. Yes, girl. Yes, you sound like you do. But I was going to go back to this. Carl, parents, and I'm not really like on their side or us. I just know that, unless it's like a cult, unless we know that people are in an institution and they are brainwashing you. But children, I don't really think that that's how I identify what happens with a parent. I find parents had zero to no guidance on what it takes to the responsibility of raising a human being in a healthy way. Bigger families, and that could be of times, education, bigger families, kids raise themselves, parents were working, or the kids raised, they're like a herd mentality. But we're not in that situation anymore. We're all locked in these little boxes and these little nuclear families. And that actually has played out even worse than family systems when we were more agrarian and tribal and social and free. Now, I think it's not quite brainwashing, but it's a massive lack of education. And it's more about culture and society and what you have to do to survive for your parents than raising children and having a family. So, and they don't understand the sponge-like nature of the child's mind. Even very intelligent people that I work with, whatever, still don't get the fact that their children are, they're like, why are they this way? They're so rude. And then they walk over here and say something exactly the same, pretty much, and don't recognize that it just came out of their mouth. That's how. I was taught that I had to prove my worth by taking care of others. I thought that I was a good person. That's so well said. Absolutely. Yeah. Straight A student, clean the house, do everything. You got it. Take care of the kids. You are and be the favorite and always the one people could lean on and talk to. Almost saying that out loud after doing all this work and talking to everybody, it makes me feel something for the global in some ways, as far as like us as a group. It's very, very sad in some ways that's where the buck stopped. And then we had to make these mistakes where we put ourselves on the line thinking that was going to be the way that we were going to get our needs met in the world. But no, that only happened in the microcosm of the family. And now the macrocosm starts to just completely suck us dry and, whoa, gotta stop. Gotta stop. Gotta rewire, because you cannot continue to live that way. Because there's nothing good for you about it, right? Good morning. Great to catch your live of yours. Just got out of Matt's live. Sweet. Welcome over. And tell me how Matt's live was. I know you guys were talking about attachment style today. That's really important stuff too. Hi, Diane. So you said it's like, I never fell for that trap. I always thought they better take care of themselves. Good. I wonder how. Yeah. To your parents, I think that, some people, depending on, I'm personally, the oldest and female. Sometimes it depends on where you are in the family with how much of this stuff what I was talking about, you have to experience, but doesn't mean that you're not going to have, some amount of that issue. Let's see. how long on average would you say go through breakup grief and opening to dating? You know, it's funny. Like, again, if you go back to the beginning of my feed, a person asked me that question and I actually answer it. And then I do a lot of different, like, recovering through narcissistic relationship videos for a time, and then I move on. So go back there and look at that, I think, because that'll give you some food for thought, because I think that's a very personal question, depending on if you've worked through some of these things and you know that you're on a path of definitely self-exploration and self-awareness, self-love. Like, that still has to stay priority, probably for quite a while. I mean, I'm certainly not going to put an amount of time on it, except for, you know, from experience, dating, you know, you can date casually and try to keep it more of like a friendship type of thing where you're meeting people, you're going out, maybe having a nice time, maybe there's intimacy, but it's really not about let's attach. Ooh, you're the one. Oh, maybe you're the next. You know, I think dating can happen while you're on a journey, and you can have this conversation with them and see where they're at and all sorts of things. But it needs to stay not as, well, I'm going to say, the point of dating, if it's to be in a relationship again, I would say wait at least a year. Do this work. But you should be able to date without going, oh my God, this is the one. I'm ready to get into this relationship. This one will work. No commitment. Yeah, I think that it's really odd for somebody with codependent traits and issues to be able to get into a relationship and be vulnerable without commitment. The desire is, and this is why I say you got to do some work beforehand, because if you don't have a firm foundation of who you are, if that person starts to love bomb you or starts to do something that causes you to regress because, you know, you just kind of light up, or you get that chemical release even, and you regress back to codependent tendencies, you're going to link in. You're going to feel like, oh my gosh, maybe this is it this time, and forget all the work you've done. That is that's a real thing that happens with people. And then I love it. You're very definitive. 1 year wait for every 5 years of marriage. Sure enough. And the way, you know, and I'm not saying, and this is the thing, waiting doesn't do you any good if you're not doing the work and you're not making friendships, building your own interests, right? Building up your life, your relationship with your body, relationship with other, you know, friends, maybe that you haven't been talking to, who knows? But you need to build a life during that year and do a lot of work on yourself. That's what you're putting this kind of endeavor off for, right? Not how about the gotta learn. So again, yeah, and I think that if that answered the questions, yeah, humans have evolved to hide their red flags. All right, Carl. That's, you know, in some true, you know, and I have a video says, you know, warning, codependent people are wired not to see red flags. We're wired not to see them. And codependent men can explain them away. So can women. Yes. And I like what 202 is saying. You need to, analyzing is only ever done when you can be objective. And I think that this is what's really cool, is that sometimes it's not only important to be able to be objective about somebody else's emotional crap or whatever they're putting out or all their problems or all this or that, and being objective and going, okay, and then having some empathy and seeing where you sit with that, but it's being able to do it for yourself as well. So meaning like, I'm dating again. I'm starting to find myself, you know, waiting by the phone or doing, like, having behaviors like I did the first time. I'm not really respecting myself. I'm not respecting my time. What am I doing? Analyzing yourself is staying objective of those behaviors within yourself, because you have red flags too. And if you regress back to a place without boundaries, because people with codependency or were raised this way couldn't have boundaries. They had to always stay open for mom and dad and whoever else. So that, hopefully you understand that. And nobody's liking this anymore. Everybody double tap the screen that's listening. Double tap the screen a few times, especially Carl. I learned about red flags being a young, naive young man dating old, divorced women. Why were you dating old, divorced women? That you needed to definitely answer that for yourself. Thank you, Powerful Phoenix. Well, but I think that we seek a spouse. We definitely seek somebody that we can take care of. And, if we can lock that in, we don't have to be vulnerable. So the vulnerability is one of our biggest issues. It is scary because we give it all over instead of giving it partially over or sharing our experience with somebody. We are completely raw. And that's why vulnerability is so frightening for us, and why we need to connect and stay with that connection and control that connection and fix that person. Something's got to happen, right? So that's something that I find for people. They don't understand that if they wouldn't give so much, or if they wouldn't come in thinking this way about themselves, and at first really, really trying to stay centered in, I have value, I have emotional value, I take a deep breath, I watch these codependent traits if I'm dating, and I'm certainly not going to get pulled into fear cycles, hopelessness cycles, the ups and downs, all of that. I'm just wanting to, again, keep myself centered and meet other people. Can I do that? And that's going to require you to go much slower than you've ever gone before. And if a person doesn't want to go slow, that's too bad. That's our requirement, is to keep objectivity. You cannot get caught up in a chaotic response or a manic response and pulled into somebody else's world, because you know what's going to happen. Fear cycles can happen just out in public. These are crazy these days. Absolutely. But you know what? And I have just 2 more minutes. If anybody has a question, I would definitely take it. And that'd be it for today. Or if you have a comment about, if you wanted to hear more about any one of those topics, I'm more than willing to answer that too. But everybody's been great in contributing and helping out. I love that. And then too, so I'll finish this up too. If you desire for affection, David, what I was saying about that earlier, and that was actually, again, after getting out of a toxic relationship or out of a relationship where you were not recognizing your value and wasting your time and energy, that was the breadcrumb. You need to recognize the affection, the sex, the touch. A lot of times that was all we ever got from a parent, like as far as even early stage, not sex, obviously, but touch, hugs, kiss, hug, closeness. That was not like, it's not like a verbal connection where I'm like, hey, yeah, how are you doing today? And I'm taking interest in you. And oh, this is what's going on, where you're really establishing a deeper connection with the child. If it's always just, again, basically physical, then a lot of times one of the things that happens is we start to really desire that and we'll compromise ourselves yet again for that affection. But I say you need to be more connected with your body and understand you need to work on your feelings first. Fear of being hurt again and lack of trust. Those are huge, because to get affection, if you want it from another person and not provide it for yourself or understand these things, for a time until you're really feeling affirmed, can only come from another human being. Or, so you're going to need to date if you want that. But you don't want to do that and then get sucked into, have a fear of being alone after breakup. Absolutely, David. I think that is because the aloneness symbolizes abandon, rejection, and loneliness that you'll never escape, because without a person, you're nothing. That's what the codependent mind is unconsciously conditioned to believe. And that if I'm not close to someone, then I don't have even a sense of self, because I've always just contained for the other. And so the affection is the one thing that you put in there, is like, oh, but I stay here for that fleeting moment of affection. Okay, there it is. Phew. But you're still actually, but within the relationship or without it, there's still this void of containment for self. You're still just a container for the other. So no, you're supposed to heal, Carl. You're supposed to go through steps here, and most likely there is a void. And that is something that I talk about. And this is a really important topic, and I don't know if I could just jump into it here, but in codependency, we were a container for our parents. So we weren't a container for ourselves. And thank you for the likes. It's like the sense of self, like a seed. We had ours, and the parent said, no, you need to water mine. You need to provide for me. I have a lot of need here for you to be there for me. I can't handle. And you're like, oh, but what about me? No, can't do it. And so what they did was basically cover over your container and said, be only for me. Be only for me. And that was, okay, well, if I do that, I love you, you've done a good job, oh, you're always there for me, and I depend on you, and now, oh, I'm having a hard time. So you get rewarded for giving up your self container for them to pour themselves into. Then when you're in a relationship, you're a container for that person, and you're a container for everything. In adult life, you're just constantly overflowing, and the sense of self is still, by the way, folks, our sense of self is still there. It's just walled off with all these defenses and all of these ideas, and still being all these ways. And we still haven't fed ourselves. So we have this very nascent, very scared, naive, even, not even integrating all the cool things that we do. Of course, you can be on your own. You can take care of all sorts of things and all sorts of people. Codependency, you're amazing. You have superpowers. But you can't take care of yourself? What's that about? So you got to catch that and start to recognize that is absolutely untrue. If I start to water the seed that's me, because it is there, this feels like nothing, then you're going to have an experience. Slowly but surely, it's going to start to grow. You're going to start to grow, but you have to start watering experiences of self-awareness, self-growth. Again, self-effort, you have to be self-affirming, your interest, friends, all sorts of things. Exactly. I was supposed to manage their emotions and walk on eggshells around them. Absolutely. And accept any decision that they made. That was one of my biggies. Oh, you're going to make another terrible decision with our whole family's life? How can I help? Because they're going to depend on you to help out with that. How to tell if a person's lying and about cheating. I kind of love these kind of questions because what do you feel? This is the thing, is like, if you feel that they're lying and cheating, you feel it. Why are you not listening to that? Or is it part of this, I'm making something up because I feel too vulnerable with this person. I feel like they have something over me, so I feel like I can't trust them. That's my way out. If I don't trust you, because I'm feeling vulnerable with you, and you're saying no to all of this, so there's a couple ways of looking at that. Sometimes codependence, lack of trust is so deep, right, that they end up projecting that fear of being hurt onto other people and not trust them without that person really doing anything, or they're reading into behaviors, or they're making a behavior out to be more than it is. That's one. other than that, they don't trust their own intuition. A lot of times people with codependency have a really strong, like an empath or intuitive cognitive facility, that their faculty, that they are not, they don't listen to, just refuse to. It's like, hello, here are the words that need to come to your mind so you can take action, or you can have a conversation, or stop doing what you're doing. And they just, I'm not going to listen to it. I'm so programmed to stay doing for the other, stay neglecting myself. I think that's a sense of security blanket. ESP. I'm nervous. I feel like I have no physical proof. Oh, well, I think that the physical proof and the nervousness, you can always, and I think that this probably is it for the questions, is like, you can always address this. And I do have, and you should go to, especially if there's a partner, to my website. I have a class that's free because I just put it out there, about 6 ways of communicating, improving communication with your partner. It helps you to, it's like a step-by-step process about thinking through why you're nervous about having this conversation, and then how to start the conversation, like preface it, and then how to enter it. Yes. And so I think, because this is kind of complicated to say here, and I lay it all out there, and you'll be able to preface and start a conversation about this issue. You need to talk about it. And you need to see how the other person reacts, and you need to see how you react, and you need to learn about each other. We're not always on the same page. And sometimes we do have very mistrusting thoughts that are completely spot on. And sometimes they're not. Sometimes we're off, but it's okay. It's okay to say something about yourself, as long as you don't do it in an attacking way. And I help you learn how to do that. But I feel like if you can go on there and really take the time to plan it out, it's a very important conversation to have, and you start doing this more often, you will be less codependent. You'll be more, you're going to practice vulnerability. You're going to practice communicating, and you're going to see in the other person a lot of things that you might not have expected. And by the way, sometimes it's pretty amazing that if we start practicing how to communicate, how well we can do. And, again, have empathy for the other person. If they become too unglued, something's there and they need to look at it. A lot of times you mentioning something might dislodge something in them that they also need to work on. This is a relationship. It's all about connection, not just holding it all in so we can see if we can make it one more day. That's another way of making sure you don't stay in a relationship forever that doesn't work. If you can't communicate compatibly, you're not really trying, you're not wanting to grow from what communication might bring to the surface as far as what you need to work on, both of you, individually and together, then why are you in a relationship? A lot of times we don't communicate to make sure that we just survive the situation. Because if we did, it might end sooner. Or if we don't, whatever, then you look back a long time. So absolutely. And I feel you all. Thank you so much for coming on. I will see you again tomorrow at the same time, and I will post later what the topic will be. Leave me comments in this or go to my feed. And also, if you go to the website, there's that Emotional Warrior Radio application if you want to work with me on that. And then there's a community there. We can work. I'm going to do a coaching call tomorrow too, which is what time? MST? It's Eastern Standard Time. And I do 11 o'clock, like 11:05 Eastern Standard Time. And then on my website, I have a membership where I do, I can invite you all on. And what we're going to do, we have a very small crew right now because I just started it last week. But tomorrow I do a coaching call at I believe 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesdays, the second and third Tuesday of the month, where we go on a Zoom call and I can work with you more specifically on your questions, and we kind of do breakout session and where everybody's able to talk. So thank you so much. And I'm able to probably hear your voice and what you're describing a little better than this. Hope to see you again soon, and have a wonderful day.